I am Milan Stellian, the Midlife Empowerment Coach. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce Laura Fokes. Laura is a certified holistic health coach supporting people who know that what they should be eating, but have a hard time sticking with it to radically transform their relationship with food. Together, they get to the bottom of why they self-sabotage and fall off track so they can eat for nourishment instead of other reasons. Laura is a facilitator of the research-based Truce with Food process, which helps clients achieve sustainable results by getting to the bottom of why they aren't remaining consistent. Laura coaches clients one-on-one in small groups, runs workshops, and speaks at summits and conferences. Laura, welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay. So let's first just get a little background on, because one of the the topic today was self-sabotage. So I'm trying to understand and make sure our audience understands, what do you mean when you talk about self-sabotage before you even get into the food thing? I mean, self-sabotage can appear in a number of ways, I imagine.
Yeah, for sure. So self-sabotage is, the way I like to define it, is when we stop ourselves from reaching our goals, either actively or passively. And so it can look like having really good intentions with working towards a goal where you start the week eating well, you've maybe meal prepped, you've cooked, you've planned ahead. And then by Wednesday, and this is obviously just an example, but then by Wednesday, you maybe have a stressful day at work and you have a healthy meal in the refrigerator that you could just heat up, but you feel like you deserve to have pizza after the long day. So you end up opening a bottle of wine and order a large pizza. And then maybe you end up eating half or 3/4 of the pizza and feel sick afterwards. Then that leads to feeling bad about yourself and feeling maybe like you have failed again. And then you might say to yourself that since you've blown it, screw it. And for the rest of the week, I'm just going to eat whatever I want and I'll just get back on track on Monday. So it kind of starts like this slippery slope of like falling off, what people will say is falling off track, losing discipline, and then just feeling like they can't get back on track. And so once the cycle starts, they might feel bad about themselves, beat themselves up for the food choice, and then that leads to focus on their bodies and how they look. And then I often find too that there's a correlation between how a person feels about themselves and how they view themselves physically with how they look or feel in their body. And so when we're talking about self-sabotage, it's usually going through a cycle like that where there might be really good intentions, but just feeling like something takes them off track and not able to stick with the goals that they have for themselves. And what I like to work on is helping them figure out why that happens when they can't necessarily figure out what's taking them off track, because it's not usually just about discipline or willpower that they're lacking.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's really the smallest thing that can take them off track. I mean, it doesn't have to, it's not like a huge binge or like a gigantic thing. It just sounds, but is it that their expectations, like, is part of the issue that there's this perfectionism around like food and food planning and like a certain way they're supposed to be eating. And so anything that deviates from that throws them totally off course? Or what are some of the reasons why this happens?
There could be a few. So yes, binary thinking is definitely one thing. So binary thinking can be either I'm all on or I'm all off. So striving for perfection, and anything short of perfection is I'm failing. And so that can definitely take somebody off track. I also like to think that it can be one small thing, or it can also be death by 1,000 paper cuts. So it can be a lot of triggers that happen throughout the day that we don't even realize are like building up to the point where it feels like you need to have a release. And it's just like, screw it, I just don't care. I can't even think about it. I'm so depleted, whether that's physically, emotionally, energetically, like so depleted that I just can't even think about or don't care about the food choice. And that's when we get into that I deserve it. So, and I can walk through this whole cycle that we're typically going through, but just from like a high level, there is a lot of stuff that can happen that can lead us to self-sabotage.
Wow. Yeah. Tell us more about that cycle, because that sounds like it really permeates everything.
It can, for sure. I'm going to share my screen just because there's a visual that accompanies it that I think is really helpful for people to see. and so that they can get an idea as I talk through this cycle. But when we're talking about stress eating, self-sabotage, if we are emotionally eating, feeling like we're lacking discipline, this is usually an unconscious cycle that we're going through. And so it starts with a trigger, and there are 4 common triggers that lead people to eat. So those triggers are feeling tired, anxious. With anxiety, often there's uncertainty that is accompanied with that because we don't learn how to deal with uncertainty. So it shows up as anxiety in our bodies. Feeling inadequate. And with inadequacy, it could be not feeling good enough or inadequate in certain aspects of our lives. It doesn't necessarily mean that we feel not good enough across the board. It might be just one area or one even project that can come up that can make us feel inadequate. And then also feeling lonely. And with loneliness, we might have a great support system around us, but we can still feel isolated, alone, or lonely. And so the acronym I like to use with that to remember those triggers is called TAIL. So again, it's feeling tired, anxious, inadequate, or lonely. Then from those triggers, we have a story. And the story was created earlier in our lives, usually something that we were conditioned to believe, and we didn't have a full context of everything that was happening around us. And so we internalized it and made it about us. And the story could be like an example of my story was when I felt misunderstood, I thought that that could mean that I would be rejected and fail and I would end up alone. And so that's an example of a story. And anytime that I felt misunderstood would be a time where I would have like an insatiable appetite and basically eat a lot, and it would trip off the cycle. Then from there, we have stress responses. And those stress responses, like animals that go into fight, flight, or freeze mode when they're at physical threat, we have emotional stress responses when our belonging is at threat. And those are accommodating, competing, and avoiding. So with the accommodator, with all of these, we have different behaviors that come out from that, which you see on here on the chart. Is those behaviors for an accommodator are typically your people pleaser. They are the ones that put everybody else's needs ahead of their own. They typically fall off of their to-do list, and their needs are often not getting met because they don't want to rock the boat and they want to make sure everybody else's needs are getting met first. For avoiders, they're your traditional procrastinators, and they will fall into like analysis paralysis, build up their to-do list, and end up not taking action. And then competitors are those that typically will compare themselves to other people, whether it's their skill sets or bodies. They also feel like they're running a marathon, but the finish line is constantly moving. And so they often feel really behind in life or in various areas as well. And so then they feel like they have to take on more, do more, and keep pushing. So they end up feeling really depleted. So from there, we eat out of alignment with our goals, we lose self-trust, and then it loops back into the trigger. So often when people are talking about how they feel like they've fallen off track and it's really hard to get back on track, it's typically because they're in this cycle. And a lot of my clients will say it's kind of like a snowball that is going downhill and it's picking up speed, and it's hard to get it to stop when we don't necessarily know what is leading to it.
So are you saying that you mentioned the 3 types of people and related that to the behaviors. So are you saying that those 3 types will behave differently to address the stressor, the trigger?
Yeah, there's a lot of common behaviors that come out of it, and it can obviously differ by person. And how it shows up can be really nuanced too. Like one of my clients who falls into that competitor stress response a lot, she didn't realize how much she was really comparing herself to other people. Like she knew that she was comparing her body to other people's, but she didn't realize how much it was actually impacting her. And she said that there's always something simmering beneath the surface that makes her feel unsettled. And when we dug into it a little bit more, it was a lot of how she felt like she was in a bigger body and she wasn't always comfortable, especially if she was like in a bathing suit. She felt really exposed. And she didn't realize that being at the pool with her friends in her bathing suit had triggered that and how much she was actually comparing herself. So it can happen a lot, like, which is why it's an unconscious cycle, is because it can happen so much underneath the surface that we don't really realize what's happening and how it's showing up. And then there can be other ways that she might be comparing, or that the competitor can show up. For me in my business, when I first started, I constantly felt like I was behind, and I didn't know where I was supposed to be, but I felt like I wasn't where I needed to be or wanted to be. And so that's where I would feel like I couldn't rest, and I had to just keep working, because if I didn't keep working, then I would fall further behind and it was going to make or break my business. And so those are just two examples of how it can show up differently for different people and lead to different types of behaviors as well.
Wow. So this is really powerful stuff in there. It seems like it would be really hard to break this cycle. I mean, like, what do you advise, or what do you work on with your clients in order to be able to break that cycle?
It can be challenging. The first and I think the biggest thing is clarity. So once we have clarity and awareness, it helps once you have awareness and clarity, you can't live in the dark anymore, right? And have this. Right now, when we don't have the awareness, it kind of controls us. But as we get more clarity and awareness, then we can regain the control. So a lot of times when people are talking about feeling out of control around food or their bodies, this is part of the reason why as well. And so this is also the course map of what I take my clients through. And so once we're able to identify the trigger, in the first session, we really get into the story as well, and really identify what their story is. And even from that, I've had clients from the first session who we meet every 2 weeks. And so after the first session, they say like their eating has already changed. And just having an understanding that it's not that they're lacking willpower or discipline, and that there really is this thing that has been happening that was created so much earlier in life that they've been living with for so long. It's really relieving to finally be able to put their finger on it and say, oh, okay, this is what's happening. And so there can be times though where there's still like quote unquote slip ups or things like that. But we're also, if we think about this whole process, it's not linear, it's kind of messy. But if we think about it going up a spiral staircase, you might take a couple of steps back, but you're still ahead, and not ahead, but you're still further along from where you were. Right. And you can't unlearn some of those things. So it does take time. It takes about 6 months to a year to go through the process that I take my clients through. But I do find that people tend to start to get results pretty quickly once they get clarity and awareness of what's actually happening.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking my language, because in all my coaching and with everything, it's always starts with awareness. I mean, you can't address an issue if you're not even aware of it. So even just, and for me, it's a lot about what am I feeling in my body, and being very in tune with, there's something bothering me, like, and what's that about? And like, oh, the way that the person in that on the phone, the way the comment they made, or that the way that person looked at me, or this email I got that really kind of bothered me, but sometimes we're not even like attaching the like where it's coming from, and knowing that, okay, I'm really stressed about this, and kind of having tools to address where, what's actually happening in our bodies, and being aware of where it's coming from, as opposed to just this general feeling that's so out of control. And then you just want to make it stop, and and I mean, food and a lot of other substances are, very helpful in the moment for, temporary self-soothing. And then problem is you feel like crap again, later on. It's a very temporary solution to a much bigger problem.
Yeah. And what I love is what you're talking about too, with like the phone call that you got off that might have triggered you in some way. I like to use the tool of thinking about, what did that trigger in me? Because a lot of times we're thinking about like, oh, I'm stressed, or I'm bored, but a lot of times we're making meaning of situations, and we make it about us. And so when we think about, and if we can stop, anytime we can break the automatic pilot, which is what often happens, right? It's like you have the phone call, somebody says something to you, it triggers you in a way, which triggers your story and then your stress response, and it like trips off that cycle. But if at any point we can stop and reflect of, okay, I got off the phone call, I'm feeling something in my body. What is this triggering in me? And really making it internally an internal focus, because it might have been something that somebody said that was offensive. And we might be missing context, right? Like we may not know exactly what the person meant, but also if we can, and if they really did mean something that was offensive, okay, what did that trigger in me? And how am I now reacting to that? And then thinking about like, what do you need to replenish you to help, so that, because often we think the food is going to help us feel better. And a lot of my clients will say like, I know logically the food isn't going to make me feel better, and yet I still eat it anyways. And it might temporarily make me feel better, but then there's the guilt or shame spiral that happens afterwards. But if we can stop that automatic pilot cycle at any point, then that can help to reduce some of the pull to food or some of our cravings, if we are able to reflect and give ourselves a little bit of space and time, instead of just reacting right away.
And I feel like food, especially food in quantity, is really acts as a numbing agent. I mean, that's to me, and I've had experience with counting on food too much to sort of numb my feelings. I feel bad about something, whatever interaction, whatever something happened. I don't want to feel that way. I don't know how to stop feeling this way. So I'm going to try numbing. And maybe it's that extra glass of Chardonnay. Maybe it's the food. Maybe it's, for some people, it could be gambling. It could be sex. It could be whatever. Sometimes, in an unhealthy way. And I just don't know how to deal with those difficult feelings. And so I'm going to try and tamp them down. The problem is that doesn't solve anything, because the feelings are not going to go away. You're just they build up inside you.
And I think part of that too is because while we might know what the surface feeling is, like you might know that you're feeling anxious or bored, tired, angry, whatever at the surface. What we really dig into is looking at, but what is that triggering in you? What are you making that mean? And because once you have more of that clarity and awareness, you no longer necessarily need to numb it, because it creates a lot of the tension of like, I don't want to feel this, but I also don't know exactly what I'm feeling. And so that's where we get into like, I'm feeling out of control around food, because then it's like, well, let me eat something. And all of this happens so quickly too. So sometimes you may not even realize, and I hear people, and this happened to me. I used to happen to me when I was struggling with food, where I would get triggered, not realize I was triggered. And then I would find myself in the pantry or the kitchen eating a lot of, I would usually start with like chips and then go to cookies and then go back to something salty and then
always starch. It's always starch.
Yeah. Yeah. But it would happen and like, it would almost be like I blacked out, but not really blacked out. But then like, I kind of come to again and be like, what did I just do? What did I just eat?
Right.
But it all just like happened in this like rapid fire, and I had no idea what was actually happening or that I was even doing it in the moment.
Yeah, no. And I love what you're talking about in terms of the meaning we make of things. I mean, even that look somebody gave me, or that comment or whatever, I'm attributing meaning to it. I've not checked it out with the person. And honestly, the more we can externalize it and say, you know what, this is not about me. This is about them in all likelihood. I mean, there are cases where we need to check things out or whatever, but a lot of the time it's not even, this is like you said, the story, the meaning we're making of something. And I really like that you help people also see that this comes from a long time ago. A lot, this kind of habit of the stories we're telling ourselves, the meaning we're making of stories are ingrained. And I think it takes some of the self-blame and pressure and just, because we all beat ourselves up. So it takes some of that off our plates. Like, okay, all right. So this is, it makes it externalizes it enough that we can kind of look at it maybe with a little more distance and not be so enmeshed in it.
Yeah. And we also look at too, how it's protecting us, because there's a purpose for it. And there's a reason that all of this was created. And even though it might not feel protective, it's still a way that we are protecting ourselves. And so we even look at how food is a form of protection too, and how we're using it to protect us in at times where we feel at risk or at threat. And one of the things when you were talking about not necessarily having a clear view or having all the context of what's actually happening, I have a client who has been really adamant that because she's not comfortable in her body, anytime she goes out in public, people are looking at her. And she thinks that anytime somebody is looking at her, that they're judging her and thinking that she is fat or in a bigger body than she wants to be in. And we've been talking about, like, how do you know if that's an accurate view of stuff? Because have people actually said something to you? And unfortunately, I do have clients that people have made comments. And with this client, they haven't necessarily made comments. And she's still internalizing anytime anybody looks at her that they are, the meaning that she's making of somebody's look and the context that how she's like, what we call closing the story loop, is that they are judging her for her body and seeing that she is not, that she's in a bigger body than she wants to be. And that she's not comfortable in her body. And so we are talking about how a lot of the judgments that she is experiencing from other people, or like what she thinks other people are feeling, is actually how she's feeling about herself, and that it's not always an accurate view of what's happening.
So are you, when you're working with somebody, are people coming to you saying, I want to lose weight, and so I want your help in losing weight? Are they coming to you saying, I just want to be less triggered by food? Is it a combination? Like, how are you helping? How are you serving these women?
Yeah, so I do not promise weight loss in my programs. Weight loss can be a side effect of the work that we do. But really what I'm working with people on is their relationship with food. And so I've had clients who have like 1 to 3 pounds that they want to lose. I've had clients who have never had a weight issue. I've had clients who have over 100 pounds to lose. But the commonality across the board is typically that they are eating when they don't necessarily want to be. And there's typically a lot of guilt and shame around it. There might be a lot of mental food gymnastics, which is where we're overthinking a food choice. So thinking like, should I or shouldn't I eat this? And then when they do eat it, then there's a lot of mental chatter afterwards of beating themselves up. And this is where that self-sabotage comes in as well. They have really good intentions. They have so much information. They know what they should be doing. They know what has worked for them in the past, but they're not currently doing it consistently, and they don't know why. And so that's really what we're working on, because once they're able to understand the why, what we ultimately want to get to is to have more neutrality around food, so that food is not triggering and you can still eat like pizza, hamburgers, French fries, cookies, whatever your quote unquote trigger foods are. And we want it to become so it's no longer a trigger. So you don't necessarily have to resist the food or feel deprived in the process, but you just are no longer triggered by it. Or I found for me, as I went through this process, that my taste changed. Like the day that I craved carrots instead of a donut, it wasn't that I couldn't have the donut. Like I could have had a donut or 6 if I wanted, but I was like, you know what? I don't really want that donut. I want carrots. And like, I used to love Twizzlers. And the first time I took a bite of Twizzler a couple years after doing this process, I was like, this doesn't even taste good to me anymore. And wine was another thing. Like I used to have a glass of wine multiple nights a week, and now I can go for a month. And again, it's not because I'm resisting it. It just doesn't sound good. Like I just don't need it or want it. And I can still choose to have it if I want to. Right. And that's ultimately where we want people to get to.
Wow, that sounds very powerful. And as you said, it sounds like it's a long process. I mean, it's not something you can change, in a few weeks. I mean, you really need to, because you're really changing ingrained behavior and reactions and that are been there for decades.
Yep. Yeah. Most of my clients, this has been something that they've been dealing with for 20 to 40, 50 years.
Wow.
So yeah, it's definitely, we're retraining things. And the way that the process works is like the first 5 sessions or 4 sessions were really like unearthing and digging up and really getting into these patterns and going through the story and the triggers and the stress responses and all of that. And then the second half of it is we're really, because a lot of that was developed from socialization and like how we were socialized to be. And so we're functioning more from what we call like a good girl mindset.
Mhm.
And what we really want to get into is more self-authoring and we want to start to rewrite their story and test new behaviors to see that they can be safe when they are, when they're building the resilience and trying new things to see like, hey, you know what, I'm not rejected if I'm misunderstood and I'm actually okay with that. And as we do that and they expand and get more comfortable, and then they feel more in control, and that's where the food is no longer as triggering or as interesting, because now they don't need the food to numb or to serve some of those purposes, because now they have more awareness and also more room to choose, as opposed to feeling like they're out of choice and out of control.
Wow. And I imagine your life, I mean, your behavior around food, it sounds like it's so different now than it was before. I mean, are you kind of self-taught? Is the program you've put together something that's based on your own experience, or how does all this come about?
Yeah, so for me, all of it started, it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to truncate it as much as possible. So I struggled with my weight since I was 12. I did multiple diets, I would lose a lot of weight, gain it all back, plus more. And food just felt like a battle to me. So in 2008, it took me about 4 years, but I lost 60 pounds.
Wow.
And had been keeping it off and maintaining it for a while. I had been working in advertising at that point for a while. And as I was losing my passion for that job and career, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. People would ask me for advice and guidance as I was going through my weight loss journey, as they were going through theirs. And I really enjoyed that. So when I learned about health coaching from a friend, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. So I went to get my certification. As I was getting my certification, I now have more information than ever. And yet I'm still in the cycle of, and I thought that like, maybe this will be the thing that I need to keep me on track and to like, because I was having lots of mental gymnastics around food, even though I was maintaining my weight. And so I was like, maybe this will be the thing. And then the scale was like slowly inching up. And I'm like, what's happening? Why am I not sticking with what I know has worked for me for 5 years? And I ended up getting connected with my health coach, who I started working with. And at the time I was working with her first on business stuff and just connecting with her because she had been doing what I wanted to do. And I learned about her program, which is called Truce with Food. And I started going through her process, which she developed over the last, now it's been 12 years. But I started going through her process to really understand why I was self-sabotaging, why I was in this cycle of eating well for a while, saying screw it, eating whatever I wanted, and then having to rein it back in again, get back on track, lose any weight I had gained, and then like I was basically in the cycle thinking about food a lot. So I started working with her, and that's when I learned about my story of not wanting to be misunderstood. And all of it was really life-changing, and really made a huge impact on not only my relationship with food, but just it had a huge impact on different relationships in my business and all different aspects. And as I started going through that, that's when I was like, okay, this is not just about the food, because a lot of people know what to eat and we're not doing it and we don't know why. So I went going through her process. That's when I was like, this is what I want to do. And I have now been certified in her process, Truce with Food. And so that's what I take my clients through, is that process, which is a 6-month approach, which can take up to a year.
Wow. So it sounds like it's very well researched and tested and you know,
Proven,
has been used for many, many years. That sounds really amazing. And I know that you have a wonderful offer for our audience today that, you know, and that's, I believe, what you're calling, which I love, a curiosity call. Tell us more what that entails.
Yeah. So the curiosity call it's 40 minutes, and it's an opportunity for you to just talk through anything that's been on your mind. A lot of people feel really isolated when it comes to their relationship with food because we're not talking about it in this way a lot. And so it just gives you a safe space where there's no judgment to talk about your challenges with your relationship with food, what your goals are, your objectives, and what kind of support would be helpful for you. And then I bring my curiosity because I always love talking to people and hearing what's going on. We can talk through a little bit more about the cycle and how that applies to you. And then hopefully you'll walk away with some insights. There's no obligation. And I do share about my approach to see if it is the right thing for you. And if not, I have an extensive network. And I also am happy to refer out to somebody else who might be a better fit if I'm not the right person for you. But that's what the call is all about. And it's just 40 minutes to chat.
That's very generous of you. Thank you. And I believe that you work remotely with people. So this is not just for, I know you're in Chicago, but you really are open to anybody watching who from anywhere to work with.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you being here today. You shared so much valuable information, and I'm really hoping people take you up on this curiosity call, because it just sounds like it would be amazing to be able to get to some of those stories we tell ourselves that really get us into this destructive cycle with food. And I would love to know that this was a catalyst for some of those conversations. And some of the amazing work you're doing. So thank you for that, and for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with my audience today. And for all of you who will be watching, please remember to write #replay in the comments. I'll be adding Laura's information, her website, as well as the link to the curiosity call in the comments as well, so that everybody can take advantage of that. And certainly if you enjoy these videos, please watch for more coming weekly. Thank you again, Laura. And until then, goodbye, everybody.